Welcome to another In Wheel Time podcast, a 30-minute mini version of the In Wheel Time car show that airs live every Saturday morning, 8 to 11 a.m. Central.
And Wheels, Concours d'Elegance. This is the In Wheel Time car show. On today's expanded live show, an extra hour for you. And we've got some more celebrated guest dignitaries and participants in this weekend's concours, along with a couple of surprises. We'll also have a couple of stories making auto news headlines this week. That and more just ahead on today's live bonus hour of the In Wheel Time car show for Saturday, May 1st. Today's In Wheel Time show sponsored by Bayway Chrysler Dodge Jeep Ram, Bayway Chevrolet, and Bayway Lincoln. Howdy, along with Mike out of this world Mars, King Conrad DeLong, Jeffrey Zekin.
I've got a question.
Hold on. Jeffrey Zekin, David Ainsley, I'm Don Armstrong.
David and I are wondering, you said bonus twice. We get a bonus, David, for this? There's a bonus hour.
Yeah.
We get a bonus in this hour.
This is the bonus hour.
Oh, the bonus. I thought we were getting bonuses.
Bonus hour.
Bonehead.
Always a hair joke, isn't it?
It is a hair joke because you have none.
That is the joke.
Paul, is it you?
Yes, sir.
Pull that microphone up a little bit closer if you don't mind. Just bend it right up. There you go. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
Paul, have we ever met?
Yes, sir. I think we have. Seems like I interviewed with you guys a few years ago.
I was just going to say a few years ago, but it's been a while. Well, of course, this is the first year from the COVID. We're back again. Paul Merryman, he's the co-founder of Keels Wheels, and his focus, from what I understand, is boats.
That is correct.
Yep. So you're the boat guy, half
Keels.
of this.
The keels.
The keels part, yeah. Now, does everybody know what a keel is, the keel of a boat? Yeah, I'm getting some feedback
Hopefully.
or something here. Is that speaker up a little bit too loud there, Mr. Mars?
Could be.
But at any rate, Mr. Merryman, it is a pleasure to have you here once again, and thank you.
It is certainly my pleasure to be here with you guys.
You know,
We're
the
glad
weather
you're back.
sucks. The weather's terrible.
Well, unfortunately, we didn't get the best weather we've ever had, but everybody's still enthusiastic.
But you
So-
know
And,
what?
and it's getting better.
So we look down the street over here, and we go, wait a minute, there's a lot of people here. There are a lot of people here. Not only the people that actually are working the event at Lakewood Yacht Club, but people that are walking here ready to enjoy all of the cars and the boats that are here. So let's talk about the boats for a second. Even though it says in wheel time, those boats probably were wheeled over here on a trailer, be my guess. At least most of them.
Most of them were,
Yeah.
yes.
Some might have been sailed in here, but yeah. I remember, I guess it was 2 years ago, that we had actually a wonderful yacht. I mean, it was a big yacht owned by an older couple, and they invited me on board, and I was stunned at the craftsmanship. This was a boat, I can't tell you the name of it, but it was big, and it was wooden, and it was stunningly beautiful. And to see the craftsmanship that go into these wooden boats that you've got out here, truly amazing.
I think the boat's probably back again this year. It would belong to the Blair family.
That's it. That's what it was.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. No, it is beautiful. It's a 1941 63-foot Elco, built in upstate New York, New Jersey, back in the day. That particular boat was commandeered during World War II.
That's right.
And served there. And then when it came out, then new owners got a hold of it and restored it, and the Blairs bought it about 25 or 30 years ago.
So it was a purpose during World War II that they needed that boat? That's why it was commandeered?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Was it because of the length or the operational part of it?
Well, probably a little bit of both, but there were hundreds of boats that were commandeered during that period of time.
Wow.
Just if they used what we would now call Coast Guard boats,
Okay.
but they were used as Coast Guard patrol boats.
Because
during
they
that
were
time.
already built, and they weren't going to be able to build the inventory they needed to do the work they needed as quickly
That's
as they
understandable.
I
Okay,
had a
get it.
chance to go down to the engine room. Wow. You talk about a detailed, unbelievable thing down there that powers that boat.
It's the boat's jewelry box.
It is
An engine of a car would be the jewelry box.
That is exactly right. Yeah, I mean, stunningly beautiful. You know, I mentioned earlier that there's some boats here that most of them, Chris Craft, for instance, there are those names that are familiar to you. But there are some motors, engines in some of these boats that are out there, at least have been in the past, that I've never heard of such a thing. Where do you get a part for a motor like that?
Well, fortunately, there are some outlets scattered around the United States that still have some of the old, and they were actually some of the real old exotic boats used aircraft engines.
Wow, I did not know that.
Yeah, Rolls Royces and Lycomings and that sort of thing.
Right.
They were converted for marine use, and most of them were converted during the war period. So, as they started building boats after the war, then they took all of these old engines and converted them to marine use and put them in the boats.
I never knew that. How interesting.
Well, when you think of an aircraft engine, for some reason, I always think of the big rotary engines.
Radials.
The
Right,
radials.
right.
And they made quite a few of those, but they weren't the ones that they were in the boats.
No.
And we had a guest on at one of our events that rebuilt rotary engines. It was over at the
Yes,
Tailpipes and Tacos.
yes, we did. Yeah, as a matter of fact, you're right. But so the other thing that was stunning to me, I think, was probably our last conversation that we had a few years back, is the craftsmanship into these boats. These are all hand-built boats for the most part. They may have an assembly line, but somebody bent that wood. They cut that wood. They made that wood to fit and make it watertight.
And that's exactly right. I've been in the process over the last 7 years of restoring a 1929 Hacker craft, which were built in upstate New York.
It's a Hacker craft?
Uh-huh.
Okay. Never heard of it.
But I needed a new cut water, the chrome piece that goes, down the bow.
Yeah, right.
The factory's still in business, and they're still building replicas of those old boats that they built back in the 20s. And I talked to the factory supervisor and told him that I needed a cut water, for this, 1929 24-foot Hacker, and I gave him the serial number and all that. And he said, "Now, Mr. Merriman, you know that we build each one of these boats by hand." And I said, "Of course I do." And he said, "There are no two of them exactly alike. Even in today's modern production, they're still so handcrafted that there are no two perfect." So I thought I could just order a cut water.
A part.
And he said, no. He said, we have to have the boat to custom fit this V that goes
What
in the
did you
front.
do?
Well,
hauled it up there?
I'm in the process of making a mold for the bow.
Oh, okay.
I'll ship him the mold, and then he will have his
Very cool.
steel
Very
people
cool.
fabricate it.
What are you making the mold out of?
Cardboard and fiberglass.
So you're doing this yourself?
Yeah.
Okay. Conrad talked to a guest earlier about the exotic woods that are in the boats themselves. Do you find that in something about judging?
Is that I mean, understanding that a lot of that wood today you're not allowed to bring back into the United States.
Well, it's just extinct. There's just so much of it that they built the boats out of in the 20s and the 30s. Just is no more.
There are no trees left.
That's right.
Yeah.
And the rarity of some of these woods.
And then how does that affect the judging? If you've made a repair and you're using a different wood in repairing or rebuilding the boat?
It's taken into consideration because everybody knows it cannot be replaced.
Truly impossible to do that.
That's
to
correct.
replace it.
We can get real close. There's some of the exotic woods that the coloring will be off. The grain effect may be pretty close. But with all the new stains and the technology we got, we can recolor the wood to make it match pretty close.
How did you hone your skills to be able to do that? I mean, that takes a lifetime to be able to do that.
It's just been a hobby. It's fun.
There you go.
Yeah, well, it's like us car guys. I mean,
So there.
Yeah, we do the same thing in a different way.
Yeah.
Although there are some wooden dashboard pieces that I have seen created that you're going, I don't know how you did that. I could never do that. There's a real skill involved.
Craftsman.
Yeah.
Did Bob Germany put a boat in this year?
Yes.
Okay, he's one of my next door neighbors, and every time he's got one of his boats out in the driveway, the crowd of neighbors come over to check out his stuff. And I know he's got 3 or 4 of them, I believe. And I know seems like every year he brings a different one to the show.
Yeah, he's a real he's a Higgins collector. He has several of the Higgins boats.
Which the Higgins were generally a World War II produced boat that was mass produced, from what I understood, for landing craft.
For military purposes, yes. Higgins built probably 50-75% of all of the landing crafts used here in World War II.
Weren't they out of Louisiana?
Yes, they're right out of New Orleans.
Wow.
How did I remember that?
You've been to Mardi Gras.
No, yeah, no. I think that I actually watched a documentary on Higgins boats and those landing craft, especially those out of World War II, and quite fascinating. It has a story unto itself.
Yeah.
So there are Higgins here.
I think we've got one or two this year. We've had several in the past, but I think we've only got two this year.
What is the most popular boat to show in an event like this?
Either a Century or a Chris Craft.
A Century. They're still in business,
They are.
and Chris Craft is too.
No, Chris Craft is back out of business again.
They came back, and now they're back out.
That's correct.
Wow.
Century has done the same thing. They have been in and out probably 4 or 5 times over the past 20 years.
Just waiting for different investors to refund them, to bring them back.
What seems to be the common problem with that? Because clearly, if they're in and out of business on more than one occasion, there's a problem.
There's just so many boat manufacturers in the modern industry.
Did not know that.
You know, back when boating was in its heyday, back in the in the 20s and the 30s, and of course, right after the war, they got real popular
Right.
in the 50s. But there were only a half a dozen manufacturers.
Now everybody and his
there's-
mother.
Now there's hundreds of them.
Right.
So
But
it's hard to compete.
You would think that there would be a market because of all of the boats that were manufactured. But let's just use those two examples, Century and Chris Craft, that those two manufacturers would focus on older boats. The restoration market, and not try to compete in today's market. I mean, is that not feasible? Not feasible.
Not
You got to have the volume to be able to support the restoration market.
That's correct.
Are there boat dealerships here representing? I mean, are there vendors here like that you allow to come in? Like Bob's Marina, or vendors that come in and sell boats. Do you have those folks here?
Yes, we've got. I think there's 4 this year of manufacturers reps. They're here, dealerships that have boats on display.
Local for Texas or United States or
Worldwide.
worldwide?
Big
High-end boats.
high-end boats.
Yeah.
All the exhibitors we have that are the manufacturers reps are the large cruisers. None of the small runabout boats.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I know. A number of years ago, my favorite boat we saw was there was a Riva out there with a twin V8 power plant that was kind of parked right there. And
Mine is
my dream boat would be that boat. What a gorgeous piece! And Riva is Italian. What a gorgeous, just to look at the boat was pretty, kind of a dual seating area as well.
Mine's the SS Minnow.
The Minnow. Of course it would be.
save up a couple of $1 million and you can own one of those Rivas.
Is that a Riva? Is that $1 million boat?
Mike could loan it to you.
Doesn't surprise me.
Prosperity Bank was here.
That's right.
So when you judge these boats, you have a team of judges that you bring in to judge these boats?
They're all boat people. They're
Okay.
either boat owners, boat restorers, people that are knowledgeable of the boats themselves. Yes.
So yeah, they have credentials. Do you have a Chris Craft specialist and you got a Century specialist, or do they kind of know their stuff with all of them and are qualified to judge all of them?
Yeah, basically, they're universally qualified. They know a little bit about all of the
Like
boats.
yourself.
And we'll have 1 or 2 people that are real specialists in a particular product. I'm a Century guy, so they call on me, and I go to shows all over the country, and they ask me to come, and if they have a problem with a Century boat, then they call me to try to resolve to see if this is really authentic or correctly installed and that sort of thing. But, Centuries just happen to be my hobby, so I've kept up with them.
So have you always lived near the water or be part of the water, live on the water?
Always.
Always.
So
Been here all my life. I'm 81 years old.
Okay. Well,
how did you
Fantastic.
learn the Century as a brand? Because they probably had so many different models through the years. How do you get all of that in your head?
Well, you just got to like that particular product.
It's kind of like a Chevy guy, liking Chevys.
Actually, almost exactly. Chris Craft was what we consider the Chevrolet of the boat industry.
Okay.
Back, in the 40s and 50s,
Yep.
and in their mass production days. They turned out a boat. It had 2 coats of varnish, and out the door it went. And they were mass produced. They could just build hundreds of them a day by hand.
Right.
Century was what we call the kind of the Lincoln Continental of the industry.
Did not know that.
A lot of chrome, a lot of extra craftsmanship, little nicks and knacks, and you get an opportunity to walk down and take a look at some of it and compare up, a 1960s model Chris Craft with a 60s model Century, and you can see the obvious difference
In how dressed up the boat would be?
Yes.
Let me ask you, as you're judging, are these guys qualified to judge the engine as well?
Yes.
They are.
Yes.
So you not only know the body, the actual wooden craft itself, but you're also schooled and know about what powers it, and that's got the wrong air cleaner on it. That's got a different color of paint that it's supposed to have. I mean, I'm just throwing this out there, but I'm using
that's the detail.
The detail of it, as far as a car guy, we'd want to know and make sure that it's got Chevy orange on the paint.
Okay. We do exactly the same thing in judging our boats. Most of these guys that are looking at these things, a lot of the old boats came with like 283 Chevrolets, and through the years they've replaced it with a 350. And these guys know instantly, just at first glance to a novice, pretty similar engine.
Right.
But these guys know
They'll
instantly
check
what they've done.
The cylinder heads to make sure they're the right cylinder heads, the block numbers and stuff, just to know that it's period correct.
Now, what about the outboards? I mean, do you have outboards out there?
We have outboards out there. Outboards,
Evinrude's, Johnson's,
and Mercury.
Yeah. Are those the 3 main players?
That's the 3 players that all of us have. If you've got anything other than that, you've got a modern engine and you automatically lose 10 points.
Gotcha. All right.
But they didn't make Suzuki's and Hondas and that sort of thing.
Yes. Yeah, right. And so what is the oldest runabout out there that you have, if you know this? I know you haven't started just yet, but you probably were in on the registration of it. Yeah.
From an outboard point of view, or just from the old?
From the outboard point of view, and the reason I say that is because those 3 engines that you mentioned, they're specific to boating. I mean, you don't find an Evinrude in a Chevy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, you don't find them propelling anything on ground. Everything they've ever built was in the water.
So, I have watched television shows where a guy is a outboard motor collector, and he has got a garage full of these outboard motors hung on the wall on display, and they go from the earliest days to current. And it's pretty amazing to me because we're talking about an engine that powers a shaft that's got a propeller on them at the end of it, but it's not a inline 4 per se like I would know it. They're all sitting sideways, most of them. And I find that fascinating that somebody actually was able to think of how they're going to get the fuel in there without the gravity and make it all work the way that it's supposed to work to get the boat out in the harbor.
Somehow or another, they managed to accomplish it.
Yeah, exactly. But how do you? I mean, is it like finding parts to a 1929 Chevrolet engine? Same for your Evinrude or whatever it is that you've got. I mean, that's all I can think of is that there's got to be some sort of a parts detail somewhere you can go to buy parts for an old outboard.
Well, I think about, the internet has done wonders for us over the past few years.
Right.
It used to be extremely difficult to buy parts for these old engines. You just had to, there was probably only half a dozen, companies in the country
Right.
that would have some old parts,
Or
new old
have
stock, or just used
or
ones.
have the tools to be able to remake or rebuild
Yeah.
that part for somebody.
But now you can go on the internet and find
Anything.
almost anything that you need.
Right.
So,
including, if you don't know, people that do know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then the person who could reproduce it for you in a machine shop, or now, and I know it wouldn't be on your level of boats, but you look at some of the stuff that they're doing with 3D printing right now, that 3D printing components to fix older stuff because they just can't find those replacement parts, but they still need the component to work. It's amazing the technology that I'm sure is, coming to the industry for you guys, making sure they can keep all of the oldest stuff running as
Would
well.
that be an option for the part that you need? The 3D printing? You said you're making a mold of it to send. Would that be something that you could do, or they will be doing that for you?
I don't know. That's a very good question, because when I talked to the factory, he said, this is the way that, in his eyes, this was the only way that they could duplicate what
Hand-built.
I needed.
Right.
Which
Unless-
is
because
just
they do
to
it-
hand make the mold.
Right.
Besides taking the boat up there
Yeah.
in person.
Yeah. But they work by hand, so that's what they're looking for as far as tools to do it that way, because that's how they know how to do it.
Yeah. Well, and he said that's exactly the way they do it for a brand new boat. They build the boat. Here they are in this new modern factory. They're hand building this boat, and when the boat is finished, they make a mold of the bow and send it to the steel fabricator to have the cutwater built.
Wow.
So he explained to me how they did it and how I would do it and just ship him the mold.
Pretty amazing.
It really is.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Now-
to have the craftsmen there that continue to do that type of work is unique as well, because that's not something you're going to see the teenager learning in Votech school, which is a shame, because I think they need to learn that kind of metal work. But there's, that skill has to be passed on to future people with a passion for the business, and if that connection's not being made, it's going to make it very difficult in the future. as
Paul,
well.
what do you look forward
Well,
to
this-
today? I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, and I was going to say, in my search for a cutwater for this old vessel, I talked to two different steel fabricating shops, that specialize in really specialized stuff, not
Right.
run-of-the-mill steel work, and they weren't interested at all at any price. They didn't understand the concept. They didn't know how to do it. They didn't want to take the time or effort maybe to do it. But
Interesting.
I could not have it built locally.
Yeah. Obviously a special skill.
Yeah.
And they've got the people up there that can do it. Yeah. So what do you look forward to today? When does judging begin, or has it already?
Judging started about 8:30 this morning.
Okay.
We should be just about finished now. The
with-
batch that I judged, we finished up about 30 minutes ago.
Okay.
So we've got that part of it out of the way.
How many in that batch?
In the batch that I was in, there was 11.
11.
So it's a lot of focus then, because if you got 11, you're able to look at everything rather than 50.
Well, we've got 3-man teams. So each one of us walk up to a boat, and we kind of pick out our specialty of that particular line of boat or, design.
Mm-hmm.
And, we know if you've done this long enough, you know that, this is correct and this is not correct, and you kind of know what to do. And then the three of you, they get together and figure out
And score it.
what
Gotcha.
what the final score is going to be.
Well, plus over time, as long as you've been doing this, kind of some of the boats recycle in for you, though, don't they?
Yes.
You see the boats. So let's say 10 years ago you scored a boat, and you get the chance to see the boat 10 years later. Are you looking for? Did they take our score from 10 years ago and make those corrections?
That would be the obvious thing
Yeah.
to me.
Well, I would think that would be something that is their objective.
Tell
but
me what I need to work on.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we do. We pass that information on. For someone like me that makes 5 or 6 boat shows a year, I'll see a lot of the same boats
It's
over and over.
yeah.
So, if he had some problems here, and I catch him 3 months from now, and
Did he do anything about it?
Did he get that fixed?
Does cash influence the judging?
No.
That is not part of the play here. I can tell you
I
that.
had to ask.
Well, it's not that I couldn't be bought, but
There you go.
it's just
There's that. Paul, it's great to see you again. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to talk to you, and your wealth of knowledge is certainly appreciated.
Well, it's really a pleasure to be here. Like I said, I'm really glad to see you guys here again and cover our show. I'm sorry we couldn't give you better weather, but next year I promise it'll be better.
Okay.
I know it will be. Paul Merryman, ladies and gentlemen,
Yay.
co-founder of Keels and Wheels, and he's the boat guy, the Keels part of the program here at the 25th Annual Keels and Wheels Concours d'Elegance. We've got more of the In Wheel Time Car Show coming your way in just a second. Are you ready? Okay.
When you're ready to shop Chevrolet, we know one that should be at the top of your list. Bayway. Locally owned by Houston-born and raised Daryl Wisniewski, Bayway brings a sense of family to your Chevrolet buying experience. When you're in the market for a new or used vehicle, you now have a place to go. General Manager Lincoln Stahl guarantees Bayway will beat any competitor's written price on the new vehicle you choose or pay you $1,000. Bayway Chevrolet is located only 8 minutes from the Beltway and Highway 288. Whether it's online or in person, you'll be welcomed like one of the family. BaywayChevrolet.com. Tailpipes and Tacos is Houston's premier cruise-in, and you're invited to join in. Whether you're a cruiser or spectator, Tailpipes and Tacos is the place to enjoy made-to-order breakfast tacos, fresh coffee, and mingle with Houston's fun car people. Mark your calendar for Saturday, May 15th for Tailpipes and Tacos at the Lupi Tortilla Mexican Restaurant in Katy, 8 a.m. to 11 a.m. Tailpipes and Tacos is free and everyone's invited. You'll see collector cars, hot rods, customs, magnificent originals, and resto mods all at one location. Cars from all over Southeast Texas cruise in and show off in our friends and... That's it for this podcast episode of the In Wheel Time Car Show. I'm Don Armstrong, inviting you to join us for our live show every Saturday morning, 8 to 11 a.m. Central on Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, and our InWheelTime.com website. Podcasts are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeart Podcast, Podcast Addict, TuneIn, Pandora, and Amazon Music. Keep listening, and we'll see you soon.